Hello and welcome to The Rare Agent, where we pull back the curtain on all things real estate. We're your hosts, Christina, Mary Jo, and Marae. Say hello to Marae from all the way from Costa Rica.
And also Marae with no voice. So hello. I'm not going to be much use on this podcast, but I was really excited about this interview because Shae's my friend and guest, and we're doing some work here together in Costa Rica. But unfortunately, this is the best I can do.
Thanks for doing it, Marae. A+ for effort.
On today's episode, our guest, Shae Invidiata, is a luxury real estate agent, entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, award-winning human rights activist, and wellness advocate. These are some of the titles she is known for. Based in Costa Rica and Canada, Shae is an entrepreneur who believes you can make money with purpose of creating a positive impact. Thanks, Shae, for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
I love it.
That's
a very powerful introduction.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack in your journey to today, and we're really excited to have you here. So can you share a bit more about your journey of becoming an entrepreneur and a human rights activist?
So I grew up in a very entrepreneurial household. My dad's side, part of his family is Italian, so also kind of that old school, you build the life that you're going to make for yourself. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial household. My dad got into real estate because of me. He came from the fashion industry, and that's a longer story. But when I was pulling myself up for the first time, my mom called him. He was in Edmonton. We were in Oakville. And she's like, your daughter's pulling herself up for the first time. And my dad looked at the guy he was with in the schmutta business going like, Kika, like, what am I doing here with this guy when my daughter's pulling herself up for the first time? And so he thought, if I'm selling luxury goods, fashion goods at a lower price, what could I do that's local to do the same? So that's kind of in the short version how my dad got into the real estate industry, and right away wanted to dive into the luxury industry. So he became known as the waterfront specialist in luxury real estate. And so I was born into that, grew up in the 80s in real estate. And it's so funny today, right? Because we're talking about interest rates and people are freaking out at 6%. And I grew up listening to stories when interest rates were 18% and gold went through the roof and people were going bankrupt and all kinds of stuff. So, I keep saying to people, I'm like, guys, we have a long way to go.
Yeah,
like it could get a lot worse. Correct. And so, I watched my dad, building his own career in real estate. And from a young age, I was a photographer and still am to a certain extent. It's an old hobby of mine, but, I used to put together like books of my photography and like try to sell them. And like, there's always these small things like growing up that it just became a part of me. Like
you're a born salesperson,
born like business owner, not wanting to work for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And
you don't really know how to work for other people at that point.
No, I had 2 jobs, three that were for somebody else. And luckily I had one boss who I still quote him today. And I help manage our team as well. And there's a lot of philosophies that I've learned actually from this one boss in particular out in Vancouver. So I was really lucky that the few employers that I have had are actually a huge part of my own leadership and my own managerial skills that, I bring into the industry for myself. But simultaneously, like growing up alongside of real estate and watching my dad in business, giving back was always at the core. It was always at the focal point of our family, and really instilled at a young age that we're blessed to be a blessing. And those who have much are responsible to give much. And so, whenever we would go and travel, go down to Jamaica, go to Barbados, wherever we were going, we would always bring clothes that we didn't need anymore, that we had outgrown, whatnot. And then even here in our local communities, like we were always a part of charities. And so it was just in my fabric that business and giving back and doing good can go hand in hand. I think a lot of people in life, and this was one thing I wanted to challenge in my teenager years, that you need to wait until you're 50 plus or you're 60, 70 retired before you can start giving back. When people have time, more time, they say. That's when you hear, elder people going, I'm going to get some charity work done now. And so I felt that you could do them both at the same time. And so when I went to university, that's kind of where that all came together for me. I worked in orphanages in high school in Venezuela. I went down to inner city Chicago. My first trip was in grade 8. going down to work with students and kids my age and younger that were less fortunate and didn't have much. So I was exposed at a really young age to a lot of stuff that most kids are just not privy to. And
It's good though. It keeps you grounded.
It does keep you grounded, and I think I started to learn the value of a dollar earlier in life than a lot of, I think young people don't really start to realize that till their 20s, and I really started to learn that in my teens. And so that's kind of a little bit of my background. And I didn't want to stay here. We're in Toronto. I was born in Etobicoke, but grew up in Oakville. And because we traveled so much and I had an opportunity in high school, I went to a summer school in Italy to do art. And while I was over there, I have studied art my whole life. Photography, fine art, painting. I've done it all myself. My dad's also kind of an artist in some ways. And for the first time, going and is that her?
So we had a little bit of internet interference and we lost Marae, but we're going to continue talking to Shae about her journey into the arts.
Yeah. Hasta luego, Marae.
Have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, she's got the sun out there. We're still here in the winter.
So
I
lucky.
was leaving my house today and I was like, I just can't do this anymore. It was just gray.
I know, but at least it's not so cold. Normally when Halloween is the turning point, but
I know. But I'm still wearing my fur. I'm
got your fur. Fabulous.
Yeah, oh, thank you.
You're welcome. I will say the snow with the sun is not so bad.
That does make a difference.
Yeah,
a huge difference.
Calgary's good for that. Calgary's very good for that.
They are. Yeah. Yeah.
So you were talking about your journey to Italy.
Yeah. So it was there that everything I had learned, and we have business in Italy as well, which isn't a focal point, but I'd been going there so many times, even at that point before going.
You're lucky.
There for high school.
So good.
It's
The food
beautiful.
Is amazing.
The food's
You're
amazing.
so well
Everything's
traveled.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm lucky. My mom was in the industry for Air Canada 26 years. So that was part of it.
Buddy passes?
And yes, buddy passes until unfortunately 9/11 happened and we still get them. But now my mom has to travel with the person we're giving them to. But before I used to be able to be like, here you go. Happy birthday. Merry Christmas.
Oh, I knew
but
that.
I still get benefits for life. So, so that's a perk of it. But that was part of the reason, we traveled a lot and we have business still in Italy. And so I'd been there many times, but this time going there and studying art, it was like everything I had learned for the last 15 years came to life. I really saw the Sistine Chapel in a completely different way. I appreciated the, Statue of David in Florence, completely different than I ever had. And it was in that moment that I realized how much more you learn by living abroad, traveling abroad. And so when I think about where I was going to go to school and apply for education, for my university, so many of my friends going to Dalhousie, going to Acadia, going to McMaster, U of T, UBC, I was like, I don't want to stay here. I want to go somewhere I've never been before that's completely different. And so it's a longer story, but the short version is that I ended up going to Hawaii, and that's where I started my university education.
Wow, you're pretty adventurous because I don't think back then, when I was going to university, it was like,
my parents,
York
it's just
or
the freedom from
was,
your parents to do it too.
Yeah.
Whatever was close by that I applied to. But now that I think back, I'm like, shit, I should have done
We had
Hawaii.
our benefits were, you're saying with your mom with Air Canada, with us, my mom working at U of T, it was free university.
And there you go.
So it was like,
That's a huge benefit.
Yeah,
Totally.
My two oldest sisters, they went to university and they did that. Once you get to the younger kids, they don't care as much. But yeah, it was we didn't have a choice.
That's a
You're
nice
going
perk.
there.
Yeah, it was.
So what happened in Hawaii?
Well, I mean, a lot of people ask, they know I have a nonprofit organization that fights human trafficking here in Canada and abroad called Free Them. And, I knew when I was going to Hawaii, I could just feel that there was a bigger purpose for me going there, that school was going to be the reason that brought me there. The student visa was going to allow me to stay there, but that something huge was going to come out of it. And some of the closest people in my life still today, I met in Hawaii, and then my journey in fighting human trafficking began in Waikiki.
What were you seeing there?
Have you guys been before?
No, I have not.
Okay, so for you guys, and your listeners, if you have not been, bucket list for sure, you need to go to Hawaii. And I lived on Oahu, which is where Honolulu is. That's where Waikiki is. And there's 3 main roads that run parallel to the ocean in Waikiki. And the middle one is known as Kohio Avenue. And if you stay there long enough, you learn it to be known as Candy Lane. And so this would be what we call the track. And it's where the girls would walk at night. So you would go from daytime and seeing families and kids in board shorts, bathing suits, surfboards to dawn. And there would be this transition of still what looked like bikinis, but with high heels and young girls walking the track.
I have never pictured Hawaii that way.
Yeah.
Ever.
You know,
no one talks about it.
No.
Nobody talks about it, but it's interesting how when you don't know what you're looking at, you don't realize what you're seeing because it's in plain sight. It's not hidden. No different than when you go to Vegas and you walk the strip. It's there.
Why
but
is it
so many people will say that they don't see it. And if you're not looking for it, you won't see it. And 2, even if you do see it, a lot of us will just shrug things off as like, that looks weird, or like, that's bizarre, or she's a hoe, she's a slut. Like we, as a females especially, right? We pass easy, quick judgment like that, myself included. It's part of even my story of like wanting to understand why a girl would choose, quote unquote, to do this. And so I think oftentimes we look at a situation, and if it's not directly affecting us, it just goes in one ear, out the other, out of sight, out of mind type of thing. Meanwhile, it's literally in front of you.
Are there laws? Are there are they lacking laws for this to be happening, or is it's just what
There's lacking all kinds of stuff, especially back then. So contextually, this is 2003.
Okay.
You know, this is 20 years ago.
I know this happens everywhere, but I don't think anybody would have thought of Hawaii because it's just not the picture that's painted.
No, it's paradise.
Yeah.
You know, that was my...
That's why it's paradise.
Yeah.
For some.
Yeah. And it was my struggle was, you know, people do look at it as this paradise, and I saw the darkest side of the islands. And no different than, you know, I live in Costa Rica as well. Costa Rica has a huge problem there too. No different than where we're sitting right now. If I were to go on Craigslist, it would take me less than 5 minutes, and I could show you all kinds of girls that are being trafficked right now from where we're sitting. Never mind downtown Toronto. Like, you know, so if you know what to look for, you're able to see that it's happening.
We have another guest coming on actually later this month. Her name is Rick Bienstock, and she's the one who did Sex Slaves.
Oh, cool.
So, I mean, she is an investigative journalist, and she blew up the underbelly of that. Hawaii was never something I thought about because it's usually underdeveloped countries that you think would have that problem.
Yeah, and that's the biggest misconception. You know, it's absolutely happening in second and third world countries, but it's 1,000% happening in first world nations. Like in the most affluent communities. It's not even that it needs to be in an impoverished demographic area. That happens there, absolutely. But it's also happening in Oakville. It's also happening in Forest Hill. It's also happening in Yorkville. You know, like we're in these different affluent communities. And so it just looks different sometimes. And it might be more what I call like camouflaged. It's not as obvious, you know, whereas in Hawaii, again, for me, it was pretty obvious what was happening. You know, you seeing girls basically half naked in high heels. And I was 18 at the time, and the girls looked so much younger than me. And we all know that a girl who puts on red lipstick and mom's pair of high heels, a 13-year-old can very easily look like an 18, 19, 20-year-old. Yeah. And so for me, I wanted to understand why these girls would choose this. I also had... I was faced with my own, I guess, kind of humanity in that I would see these girls day in and day out. When I'd wake up in the morning to go for an early morning surf, come home from school, come home from night classes, come home from the bars or like, you know, clubs at 2, 3 in the morning. Because I was 18, 19 at the time, you know, and I would see these girls. And so it's no different than if you're a creature or, habit of creature, creature of habit.
Creature of habit.
Yeah, creature of habit. You go to the coffee shop at 7 a.m. or you go to the gym at 7 a.m., you're going to see certain same people. And at the beginning, you know, you just take note of those people. And then the next few times you might do eye contact. Then the next few times it's like a half smile. Then it's a good morning. Then it's like, have a great day, have a good workout. And then you eventually start small chat with those people, and they become your community coffee people, your gym coffee or your gym people. And so I was faced with that. It's like, I'm going to ignore them because of maybe my ignorance, my own judgment I was passing, my lack of understanding, or acknowledge that they're humans, number one. I also believe that we're created. So for me, that was also like an emotional, we bleed the same way type of thing. So I made that decision to start to acknowledge their presence. And it's a much longer story, but I started interacting with the girls over 2.5 years. And I started to learn their stories about the boyfriends that promised them a dream vacation of a lifetime, and it turned into the literal worst living nightmare, to the modeling agencies that didn't exist when they showed up on the island, to thinking they were going to LA on a trip, to find out that they ended up in Hawaii with their documentations confiscated, to the forced abortions, to the forced augmentation procedures, to the pimps taking their kids to school and picking them up. And being on an island, your chances of escaping are that much harder than if you are on the mainland, what we call it, where you're in LA or you're somewhere else. And so what I started to learn is that the word prostitute that we equate so much with choice is widely misrepresented, and that the more accurate word to be using is prostituted. And it's amazing how just like those powerful 2 letters can radically change the meaning of a word. Did not learn the word human trafficking until about 3 years later, when I was living in Vancouver at that time. I had moved off the island, but I was describing exactly what human trafficking was, that these girls were lured, coerced, they were being forced to do things they didn't want to do. They were being forced against their will, being held, living off of the avails.
If their documentation is taken away, what do you do in a foreign country? Because I mean, it's literally that easy.
Yeah. Where were the predominant countries that they were coming from?
So, and I love, Mary Jo, that you said that. And I love that you're asking the question, because that is another misconception. Like both in Canada and the United States, over 90% of victims are domestic, meaning they're Canadian or they're American. So as much as we have girls that come in, and it's all geographical based, it's all economics. The demand of purchasing sex drives the supply, right? That's basic economics. And so when you look at Hawaii being on the very west side versus, let's use Toronto, New York City on the east coast or east side, you're going to see demographics that are trafficked into our borders are going to reflect that. So Toronto, where we are, New York, you're going to see more people coming from Eastern Europe, Africa, versus the west side will have more Southeast Asian, just because of the expense to move and traffic these people. So that's what we tended to see more in Hawaii.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you decided to start a foundation. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. So it was about 7 years. I moved to Vancouver. And, I say that this issue of human trafficking followed me, but it's simply like once you know what you're looking at, you can't unsee what you see. And so, I'd grown up we used to go to Banff, we used to go to Whistler. My godparents are from Whitehorse just outside of Vancouver. So I was very familiar with like the downtown east side, Kitsilano, like that whole area, even though Kits is not where the downtown east side is, but like, you know what I mean? Like the Vancouver area. When I moved there, it was like, wow, I just saw it in a completely different eye. And now understanding what I was seeing in the downtown east side, I started wondering what was Canada doing to fight this issue. And my last year in university, I did an exchange in Australia. I lived there for a year. And so when I went there, it was the same thing. Well, what's Australia doing? They legalized prostitution. What does that mean? There's a lot of theories that don't pan out around legalizing prostitution, which that's not what this conversation is about today, which I'm sure your investigative journalists will love to discuss that, which I'm happy to answer anything, but I know like that's not the focal point of, and it's a lot to go into. This topic just followed me. And so I wanted to understand like what was Canada doing, other countries doing. And so when I came back here in 2009, I was gone for about 7.5 years.
This was after university.
After university.
So were you working at the same time? Because we all know charity doesn't really pay the bills, unfortunately. So at this time you were working in real estate?
No, I hadn't even got my license yet. No, so 2003 to 2007, 8, I was in university. I transferred from Hawaii Pacific to UBC. That caused a bit of a delay. And then by the time I graduated, it was like 2007, 2008. And then I had decided to come back to Toronto in 08, 09. My dad's father had fallen really ill. And so I decided I was going to come back here. He lived longer than expected. And so while, God bless him, he's, now has passed on. But while I was here, I was like, instead of working for somebody else, I should be working for our family business and for my dad and get my real estate license. He's never asked me to get my license. I never wanted to get my real estate license either. Never thought I was going to. I wanted to be like a fashion photographer in New York City. That was like my thing. Totally didn't happen. I wanted my white BMW, white on black 3 Series, which that was my first car that I paid $950 for. It was a 1984 in Hawaii, like pure beach surfer chick car, which was great.
That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, it was a great deal. Yeah, absolutely. And because they don't deal with salt in the winter like we do here. Like those cars can last.
Like Cuba.
Yeah.
They last forever.
Forever, So in that time when I came back, I was like, what's Canada doing? To your point, I'm making money, I'm working. And so I got my license, and almost at the same time, I started this initiative called Free Them to raise awareness to fight human trafficking, having no idea it would turn into a nonprofit organization that's gone on to amend the criminal code in Canada 3 times, changing federal legislation. We've helped to rescue over 500 victims of human trafficking. We're a stakeholder to the federal, provincial government of Ontario and the municipality of Toronto. We do anything around preventative measures to fight human trafficking. So all of the awareness campaigns, fundraising, speaking engagements, that sort of thing.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Like that's a full-time job. I know because I do a lot of this stuff. So that's a full-time job.
Yeah.
So you never experienced any type of situation where you might have been trafficked to start this. You that nothing in your life happened where you're like found yourself almost in a situation where you could have been, or
you knew anybody personally who'd been through it, or was just from randomly meeting people?
From being in Hawaii.
At that time, I didn't know anybody who had been trafficked. Okay. Or I'm going to call it like prostituted, because I didn't even know that there was a word called trafficking back then. Looking back, it was probably almost 5 years later after me doing this work and I'd moved from Hawaii, that looking back, there were 2 different times that I actually got picked up by pimps. I still have their business cards that says property management.
Oh my God.
With red money bags. And because they see the girls as property. And I only realized it literally, it was like 4 or 5 years later, where I was asked to go to Maui on a vacation for a couple nights, everything paid for. And me being I have a very strong backbone, confident enough in myself. And also too, I'm blessed that I wasn't going to school on a student loan. I had actually got a scholarship, an 80% scholarship, but I didn't need anybody's money. I was blessed that like my parents, if I needed food, I had food. And so that component is the difference between somebody who's vulnerable and the pimp preys on them for that. If my situation was different,
you would have been in Maui.
I might have gone to Maui. Yeah. Don't know. Can't say either way, because that's just not the reality of what my situation was. But he tried, and I had it happen 2 times where there was an offer like that. And at the time I had no clue. So I was just like, I ran my mouth at the guy. I was like, I don't need your money. Like, da-da-da-da. And now looking back, I'm like, wow, I could have totally gotten myself hurt doing that, and worse. So fortunately for me, no, I never had anything personally get to that point. And it wasn't until 2009, I was in a coffee shop with my parents on a Sunday afternoon, and on the Toronto Sun front page was this Hungarian girl coming out saying human trafficking survivor trafficked from Hungary into Toronto. And I still have that news article. And I said to my parents that day, I was like, I don't know how, but I'm going to work with this girl. She sits on my board today for Freedom, and she's been one of my dear friends for years. And she used to have an organization called Walk With Me, and it was through her. She was all Frontlines. So we funded her organization that did the rescuing of the victims here in Canada. So it went on to doing all kinds of other stuff. And then at the same time, I was like, well, back then and still today, Freedom is a 100% volunteer organization. So everybody on my team, we're full-time dedication, full-time passion, but we all have our own vocations. You know, some are small business owners, some, work a 9 to 5, others are publicists, me being a realtor.
Yeah.
But I really believe that we could do both at the same time. Ton of work though, as you pointed out, Mary Jo.
It's a passion project though, right? It's like it's something you truly believe in. And when you truly believe in something, it doesn't matter about the money.
No. And it comes, like that's what I always believed is that like if you're putting it out there and you allow people the opportunity to participate, it always gets taken care of. People want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. People want to wake up feeling they have purpose. And if you don't like your job or the work you're doing, charity work is obviously a gateway for that. And so that was part of my structure back then, still is now. And then, I got into real estate because I was still here. And then it was like 13 years later, and I was like, wow, I'm still here.
Yeah, but you travel back and forth, right? You're not just here. You're back and forth between here and Costa Rica, right?
Yeah.
What started that? Let's get into a little bit of your Costa Rica life.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm 30. I turned 39 in December.
You've done a lot in a very short amount of time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Impressive.
It is very impressive.
Thank you. And, years ago, it's probably like 34, 35. I said to my dad, I was like, I'm going to blink and I'm going to be 40. And I'd be like, why am I still here? Like, I don't love this life. I don't love the environment. I've shared with you guys, like I've lived in places with like the ocean and the real warmth and the mountains. And I really wanted to get back to that. There's something really powerful about that environment that does so much for everything. My mental, stability, my soul, my ability to even just like in business, that's why when people leave and go away to the ocean, they come back and they're like, wow, I'm so refreshed. I have all these ideas that have flown. My creative juices came back. And it's like, yeah, because you're in a high vibe place, and that's what it does.
There's something about being close to the water too that just,
everything
re-energizes you.
Big time. Yeah.
Just listening to water and just hearing the waves.
Totally.
And watching I watch videos sometimes of like
where do people tend to go when they leave here? They go
Totally.
somewhere hot.
Yeah.
Near an ocean.
Yeah.
And then when you get there, you're like, why did I take so long to come here?
Totally.
Yeah.
And that philosophy, or like how people set up their lives where they work all year to take 2 weeks off or 4 weeks off throughout the year to go to the place that they really want to be at
is crazy.
Is crazy to me.
It is crazy.
And so that's what I cried about for years, being like, I don't want to do that. I'd rather come back to Toronto for X amount of weeks out of the year and have my full time be somewhere else. And so when COVID happened, there was a lot of things that I really struggled with. Given the story, that I just shared with you, there's a lot of freedom's a really big thing for me in my life, and the exploitation of people at that. And so whenever you talk about the lack of freedom of speech, freedom of mobility, freedom of body autonomy, the warrior in me comes out. It's like, no, I will not stand for it. You do you. I have no qualms with what you want to decide, but do not tell me that I'm forced to do anything, And so that's like where I draw the line in the sand. And I've been fighting this for 20 years on the issue of human trafficking and exploitation. And so when COVID happened, there were certain things that just like didn't align for me with what was coming down in our government. It was a little too tyrannical for me, which some people on here might get mad at me for saying that.
I don't think you're alone in that thought process.
But that was for me personally. And I just saw this as really an opportunity to go live and be where I've said I want to be. Costa Rica was never in my top 5. Like if it wasn't COVID, it was never going to be Costa Rica. I was moving to California. That's where I was going. And now you can't pay me to go to California.
Well, things have changed a little bit
Things have changed
there.
a little bit in California, you know? So that's really why, you know? And Costa Rica for a very long time has been a country that has been natural driven and has been very focused on elevating self.
Well, they're blue zone.
Yeah, they're blue zone and, you know, mindset wise and yoga and wellness. Like, so
For people like me, what does blue zone mind mean?
So there's 5 blue zones in the world, and it looks at 2 components where people live the healthiest and also the longest. And in the Nicoya Peninsula, Nicoya region, which is kind of where Nosara is, it's just a little more south, we host one of the 5 blue zones in the world. And so that's it's pretty special. There's only 5. So
yeah, it's one of the, and I've been there a few times too. So I mean, every time I go, it's like, you know, you're gonna feel better. One, because of the weather, you're close to the ocean, you're eating better, you're up early. Like it's a vibrant, active atmosphere.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like it's very difficult to come back to what's happening here.
Yeah, it is.
How often do you come back and forth now?
Well, in present question, that is changing literally. I just got a place here in Toronto again, which is wild. And I'm still unpacking. I literally just got it October 26th because, you know, my niece is here. She's just 3.5 now. And, you know, still my business is here with my father. And, you know, he's not getting any younger. He's still doing good. But there's reasons for me to be spending a little more time here. And as long as Canada's kind of in this climate state, I can handle that, you know? And so now I don't know how I'm going to answer that question because I don't know. I might be spending more time here than I expected, but when I left, I didn't come back for 10 months. Yeah.
You were gone.
So how do you run your real estate business if you're not here?
So blessed that I've got a great team. You know, we've had a team for 20 years, whatever it is. And so my clients are very comfortable with it because they know the services, you know, and I've been licensed and in the industry for 13 years. So it's very different when you're an established agent with an established brand. You know, if you was a solo agent, there's no way you could do that.
No.
You'd end up having to refer your business. You couldn't even be on the file. You know, at that point, you're actually doing a disservice to your clients, you know, at that point. But because of being on a team structure, you know, I would just bring in the right agent to service and work with my clients on the ground here. Also, COVID changed the game for that, right? Like, I mean, we have clients that never, ever before could you go and do what I call like a first step, which is like a meet and greet, going to see a house through FaceTime on a $3 million, $5 million property. There's no way. Like if my competitor said, you know, oh, I'll come in person and Shae can't go because she's like out of the country, I'm not getting the listing.
Yeah.
But COVID changed that whole opportunity.
Yeah.
And the mindset. And so when I was away, that really wasn't a factor. Like I had one of my strongest years was 2021 and wasn't even here for like the majority of it, you know? And then even going into 2022. So that's changed some things, but that also will only go so far, even still. You know, at some point your clients are like, well, you're either here or you're not here. You know, you feel like you know the market, but it is different. If you're out of touch, you're out of touch. It's just like how it goes. And so that's part of also my decision to be back here. You know, we're looking at some growth in our team right now, which also requires me to be here. And it's exciting for that. It's a new chapter. So yeah, I don't really know.
And the market's really pivoted, I think. So you've realized since you've been back how different it is.
It's wild.
Like how would you counsel your clients right now with what's happening in this current market?
So, I mean, buyers and sellers, obviously very different. Sellers, interest rates are going to continue to go up. So you certainly, even if you feel like you're taking less right now from price, I believe when interest rates go up again, that they will have to accept even less because the buyer's affordability will be, you know, that much less. So time is definitely now as a seller to put it on the market. And for buyers, it's hard because like I've had so many deals fall apart in the last like 2 months because of the rates, and buyers are really afraid, right? That they don't know, even if they purchase something, what happens in like 3 years from now.
Yeah,
right?
There's a lot more hesitancy for sure because, you've got the buyers who purchased back in
Completely
2019.
removed FOMO.
Yeah.
Completely. FOMO was like the biggest driving force at some point. Now it's like, I just want to be able to hold on to what I have. It's so you think in your opinion, you think they're going to, in the new year, or do you think in December they'll raise the rates?
Well, they just held off in raising. They're talking about it for December. Whether it's December or January, in hindsight, it doesn't make a huge difference. But I do think there will be another one coming soon, especially because they didn't raise rates this last time round.
I think there's a lot of hope that they're going to come down by middle of next year.
So BMO is saying that. An insider friend of mine is saying that. But then you have other banks that are saying the opposite. I think that's really more of throwing hope into the market that rates are going to come down. I don't believe that they are. I think they could come down slightly. And here's what I'll say, and I do say to buyers, is that even if they lower them slightly, you're going to have so many buyers that are going to be jumping into the market that what you would have paid now with a slightly higher rate, you're going to pay more on that purchase price. And you're going to have buyers then competing for that just because of that. The psychology of having that half percentage or whatever they're going to decide it's going to be. And so better to make a calm decision in what's more of a buyer's market right now than we have seen in a very long time.
Yeah.
Right? Choose what you want. If you have you're not going to ever find a perfect home, but if it's ticking off the majority of your boxes, my advice is to move forward with it, get that rate, and then try to renegotiate your rate. You have a better chance at that, at least, than you're buying at a stable price for you and it's not inflated and you're not competing.
I think that's the key factor right there is you're not competing.
Yeah.
Like you finally have a chance to actually look at the product that you're buying with the proper mindset without the pressure.
Totally. Without the pressure and also like the time crunch, pressure. Yeah. And then like you literally, I need to know in the next couple of hours.
We went through this in 2020, I think it was when COVID happened.
Yeah.
And the market tanked at the end of 2020. And I remember begging people to buy.
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, you have an opportunity here. We had about 4 months before the market just rebounded back in 2021.
Yeah.
But I think people are always waiting for the market to bottom out, and that's just not something that you can crystal ball.
I think if it pauses and people feel like it's paused, and people are going to start seeing how the deals, let's call them, that buyers are getting, that is also going to fuel people to jump back in as well. They're like, oh my God, you got it for that. Yeah. And the rates are not changing. Then I'm going to they'll feel a little bit more stability in their decision making. But right now is, you want a home inspection condition, you want a sale of purchaser's property, you want this,
you have
put it in there.
ability.
You want to come in 15% under asking and you want to see if they'll sign it back. Now is your time.
Like whatever closing you want, even there's a lot of flexibility.
This is kind of the fun part of our job though. We actually get to negotiate. Whereas the past few years, there's been so many people who've been getting into real estate thinking, oh, this is easy.
Yeah.
No. Well, actually,
totally.
Yeah.
Now
they
every
can
time
see.
someone says that. Yeah. Oh, it's easy. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Go find clients.
Totally. Right?
Yeah.
100%.
One thing I experienced this week was I put in an offer for clients and there was 8 of them. 8 offers. And
How low was the price though?
And where was that?
It was in North York, Victoria Village.
Okay.
It was listed at $899. Dummy price, of course, but 8 offers. They didn't take any.
Yeah, because the sellers are still not realistic.
And that's the problem I'm having now with my buyers. It's like I'm trying to coach them like, okay, it's not like
is this your listing?
No, I'm the buyer side.
Oh my, can I just tell you guys, this is how nuts the market is.
But the market is telling you out of all those
because
8
they wanted higher than what they listed for.
They wanted
they underlisted it.
They underlisted it at $899. They've relisted it now at $1,298.
Oh my God.
We were offering at $1,150. Like we were, and he told me that we were in the middle. Like I was like, okay, my clients are just like, we're not paying more for this house that needs a gut. And he was like trying to get me to come back, and I'm like, listen, like we're not going to give you something that doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah, there's a real standoff happening between the buyers and the sellers.
Big time. And even you're having sellers even changing their mind. Like I had a listing. We started at 999. We reduced 949.
Yeah.
899.
Yeah.
Then at 849. At 849, I got all the showings. Everything started happening.
You're priced right.
Buyer came in with an offer, fell apart on financing. I brought my own buyer to it. We put together the deal. My seller calls me and goes, this is all my fault, but we're not going to have a deal today. I was literally getting him exactly what $3,000 more than what his acceptance number he told me was going to be. He's like, yeah, I want 930,000.
Who did you talk to?
I'm like, bro, do you know we're listed at 849 right now? And we're not doing it to get multiple. No, it wasn't a holdback. He's like, yeah, no, I don't want to sell it unless like it starts with a 9. Like, oh my God, but we've been listed twice at 899 and 849.
This is the problem with expectations.
And the market, like you have sellers who want to offload certain things, but then are also having their own, what we would say is normally like buyer's remorse. It's like having seller's remorse is happening now, I think, with some people.
But they're still in the belief that it's going to turn around in the spring.
Yeah, well.
Everybody else.
Yeah.
Everybody, anybody's like, even the
wait until
business,
spring.
Yeah, even the business I'm bringing it, like I'm getting ready for to fill my funnel. It's like we're pushing it till 2024.
Yeah.
I'm like, if that's what I'm doing, who else is doing that right now? Saying like,
Sure.
you know what? If you don't like, if you really want to make sure that this is what your property is going to sell for, then okay, let's have a little bit more time and let's wait till the new year. But
there's no way to know that that's going to happen.
the other
right?
question is like, what has to happen in the macroeconomics to make the prices come to go back up?
Yeah.
And most people are like, even two of those things are a little far-fetched right now. Rates coming down considerably, a war stopping, like it's just...
Well, and plus with the amount of immigration coming into the city, like where is everybody going?
Yeah, well, that's the
But they can't
question.
afford those.
They
people,
can't afford it.
They
yeah,
can't
like
afford
it's
anything.
just there's a perfect storm happening right now, which I don't think
And
people
if
really
Canadians are
understand.
afraid, why would someone who's immigrating here, if pay for real estate as well? Like they're...
Well, you should ask Trudeau that because he pays for their housing. So that's
Oh, do we want to
all
get into
pay
that? Do we want to go down that road? Probably
we don't
not.
have to, no.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that's a whole other beast of a question.
Oh my God, every developer I talk to is not happy right now.
I believe, though, that a lot of the commercial real estate, it's not going to happen right now, but I think in the next like 5 to 10 years, a lot of the commercial towers, it's wild. The vacancy rate went from 2% last year to 12% in commercial. Like that's a huge...
But that's office space.
Correct.
Yeah,
Office space.
not
yeah.
industrial.
No, correct. But I really believe you're going to start seeing these offices get converted into subsidized housing.
They have
because
to be.
of not just even the immigrants coming in.
Our
But you
own
talk
people.
about rates going up again next year and the amount of non-renewable debt that is going to be coming.
It's
and
already
people
talking
losing
about
their
all of
houses.
this.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah, well, and all this commercial space, and Calgary's having the same problem. All this commercial space that's sitting empty.
Yeah.
And they I know some companies that have 3 floors.
Oh, yeah.
And they're trying to do this hybrid where people are coming back to work 3 days a
Nobody
week.
wants to do that.
No.
No.
And even still, is it worth it for them to have that much real estate?
Yeah.
And be paying that kind of money?
Yeah.
And they don't want to. They're all downsizing.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Yeah.
And then who's going to pay the cost to retrofit these buildings?
Mm-hmm. I know. Yeah. Us. Then tax dollars.
Yeah. Like it's just, again, another
2026.
I know.
another rat hole.
New campaign.
Right? Well, I mean, you're seeing it. Look how many of the projects are going into receivership. Like, huge names.
Well, I think the big one that everybody's talking about is Mizrahi, right? And then, but there's just so many more. Like it's a domino effect that's happening.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm in the same boat, and I was looking at my contract, and I'm stuck until 2027, and if they're going to build or not.
Oh, you're in that project.
I'm not in that project, but
Okay,
another
okay,
project where like everything has stalled, and I've been wondering, like, are you going to take my like, are we going to get our deposits back, like, or just kind of like these, but they're not in receivership, they're just holding on to it, and they're gonna run out the contract until 2027.
Yeah,
which is awful
because they can.
They can,
Yeah,
and they don't have to give us any information right now.
Yeah.
And that's happening a lot. There's going to be a lot of questions, I'm sure, after this.
Absolutely. As there should be. People should be questioning more.
100%.
We were all running like like flocking to projects or to buy real estate, and no one was really asking many questions or what's going to happen. Everybody's like, no worries, the rates are going to stay low for however long, and that did not happen.
I walked away from a project actually in 2020 that I invested in. We had the first deposits down. It was the first project that I had my mother actually invest in it with me. I'm like, Mom, like you need to start doing this on your own, blah, blah, blah. And my mom's asking about the risk. I'm like, it would have to be like a unforeseen God circumstance that like the world's going to collapse, that like this project's not going to move forward.
Or just a really, really bad government that helps enforce that.
Literally, we went firm, and then our cooling off period ended on March 20th. It was like 3 days after the world shut down. And our first deposit, I didn't put a stop payment on. I knew it. The moment that happened, I was like, wow. I was like, this is it. This is the unforeseen circumstance. I told my poor mother it would not happen. Like, I was so mad at myself. But I told my mom, I'm like, it's better for us to walk away from that. They're not, with everything going on, I was like, the developer is going to be able to resell it, number one, to somebody else, unfortunately, who's not thinking the way that I am. But I'd rather walk away from it and lose it than put more money down and still lose it.
Well, at that time, there were so many unknowns. I mean, one thing we can all say, because we've been in the real estate market for so many years, is that it is cyclical. It's just, can you hold out?
The stamina, you need it.
Can you hold out? And I think there's a lot of projects that will continue, just not now. They're going to take a little bit longer. And I'm also invested in a couple of different projects, and I'm like, take as long as you need, as long as it gets built, and the market turns in the next 5 years, I'm good. And again, it means that you just have to be able to hold out.
Well, the number one rule in the stock market, if you trade, right, is you never lose what you don't sell.
Exactly.
So it's you have to have that stamina, the stomach, to be able to pass through and persevere like these downturns. So, and that, who knows, if you bought last year and you paid a little higher and you're looking at prices, that could be 5 years. It could be 6 years from now. You just don't know. But you don't lose what you don't sell.
Well, and if you look back though on 20 years, right? How many people bought 20 years ago and then sold 20 years later? How much money did they make?
Well, huge. And, and this has always been the thing, even in traveling abroad, right? People, they look at Toronto. If you're in Toronto, they always say, well, it's got to stop somewhere. I'm like, compared to the global landscape, Toronto is so cheap. Like, we've been on sale for the last 15 years, even with prices. It's unfortunate for locals because there's a discrepancy for sure between cost of living, what you earn, and then the values of real estate.
It hasn't kept up.
But when you look at other countries around the world and major cities, like we're still so cheap and affordable. So even in what we're going through right now, as much as prices might go down, again, if you have the stomach to hold it, whenever the market's going to actually turn around to what we know it, it's just going to continue to go back on course.
And if you can handle it, like, you'll be so glad you did.
You'll be so glad you did.
I have a lot of clients now in 2022 that bought and just, they're feeling it. And
of course,
it's like, okay, I knew I was going to have to hold out, but like, how long am I going to have to hold out? I'm like, a little longer.
A little bit longer.
A little bit longer. But, if it was, everybody would continue to do it if it was just always so lucrative. And
there is opportunity here too. I mean, in every market, there's always opportunity, right? It's just being able to have the education to recognize it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even at a higher rate, where yes, some people have to sell lower, but that means you can possibly buy lower. I had multiples on a property yesterday, and it was at that sweet spot around the $1 million mark. And because financing kind of ends at $1 million, if you're only qualified up to $1 million, even though we were priced just over, nobody wanted to go over. So this is where pricing strategy really matters. Very, very important.
Totally.
Like when you're reducing, you're not going to reduce 20 grand at a time. You need to get into like almost that next buyer pool.
100%.
Be serious. If you're going to do a reduction, then make it
the price
something.
Needs to be effective. 100%.
Everyone's like, oh, 15 grand. That's so cute.
I think we've all been in this situation, not just now, but before, where we've chased the market down. And I find myself counseling clients about this. I'm like, listen, it's not going to get better right now. So, you know what I mean? You don't want to be in a position where you priced it wrong and then you have to reduce like we just talked about.
Absolutely. Big time.
Okay, well, let's get into the fun stuff.
Okay. Yeah, we've covered a lot.
Are we not having fun?
I'm totally having fun.
I think we're having fun.
I'm having, actually,
we're trying not to
I
be.
can't believe it's already been 55 minutes. Like, we've gone by so quickly. But, okay, what's your favorite, the Rare Roundup, what is your favorite GTA neighborhood?
In Toronto, I would definitely anything just like by the waterfront.
There's only
Not
so much
Queens
waterfront.
Quay, really, it's too touristy for me. But
Well, it only lasts about 4 months of the year.
yeah, and if it's not
When the
that,
duck's there.
I love Little Italy. Little bias, I guess, but I do love that area as well.
Yeah, there's only so much
So good for
waterfront.
us.
Yeah, and the beaches, obviously. Beaches are always good too.
Okay, as a busy boss babe, what is your go-to meal on the road?
Well, kind of a trick question because they usually intermittent fast. So that does help that scenario. Here, I would say if I am stopping for something, I do love Chipotle, a bowl, super clean because it's all like
And
high
and
quality
huge.
meat. Yeah, and huge, like lots of salad, guac, cheese. Otherwise, I always start my week with a ton of hard-boiled eggs in my fridge and cucumbers like that I cut up. And I always have something protein in my car that's like an easy grab and clean so that I'm not
Starving.
Yeah, or like going through like the silly Starbucks drive-through to go get a protein box of like processed cheese and like their crappy meat, like because that's what I would
And
get
you're
from
going to pay
there.
$20 for that now.
And now I'm paying $20 for that, yeah, which is still cheaper than Costa Rica because it's in USD, believe it or not. But yeah, usually like hard-boiled eggs, cucumbers, something like that. Yeah.
Murray would be like snapping for you. Right up my alley. And what would you say makes an entrepreneur rare?
What makes an entrepreneur rare?
Kind of a trick question.
As soon as I thought about when I was saying it to you, I was like, fearless. I feel like you're so fearless listening to your story.
Thank you.
You don't
I'll
you don't
receive
talk
that.
yourself out of stuff. That's what I see. Like you're one of those because
you don't get in your own way.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's a lot of people who want to do things and they never do because they talk themselves out of it. And you're not that person.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, both
You're
of
welcome.
you for that.
We answered for her.
I know. I feel like you answered for me. I think maybe for advice for other people is choosing to take the bet on yourself, betting on yourself every time, because you can't rely on other people for really anything. I can always rely on myself, and if I need to course correct, that's on me, and I know how to pivot. I know how to get back up again and try. And I feel that a lot of people, maybe tying in with fearless, most people don't ever do that which they want to do because they're afraid of that failure. And what if I fail? And what if I screw up in front of everybody else? And when you learn to embrace the failure as part of the journey, and that it's, for me, I always say fail forward. And failure is not in the falling down.
I love that quote. I heard Denzel Washington say it once and I'm like, yeah fail forward. I love that.
Yeah, but it's true, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And there's not anybody who's gone to the top without learning over and over again how to fail forward. And I say it all the time, failure is not in the falling, it's in not getting back up. So every time you get back up, it's a win. Every time you get back up, there's a lesson that you learn. And taking the risk on yourself is the greatest thing you can do, because you're taking a risk by not doing anything and staying comfortable and what you think is playing safe.
But are you really comfortable?
Correct. Right? Yeah, I agree.
I hate being comfortable.
You know what?
Like
the wrong word is complacency.
Complacent or just unhappy. Like most people don't realize they're unhappy staying still, but they're too afraid to do anything else.
Correct.
Yeah.
Anything
is better than being being suffocating in unhappiness.
Yeah.
And I always say, you can always go back, right? Like try it. Like if you really go for something and it doesn't work out the way you thought it did, what's to say that you can't go back to that complacency? Why you can't go back to maybe that job, whatever it is. If you were good in the role that you did previously or you are doing right now, nobody wants to work right now, for starters. So if you're a good worker, there's a chance that person will probably take you back.
Well, and there's a ton of opportunity now
There's
for
lots.
entrepreneurs.
Big time,
Like there's never been a better opportunity for entrepreneurs, I think.
I agree, So bet on yourself.
Thank you, Shae.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
guys.
you so
This
much.
was great.
Yeah,
So
thanks
good for having me.
Thank you.
Audience, don't forget to share, like, comment. We'd love some more subscribers, so that would be awesome. But
and also, if anybody wants to volunteer for your organization,
yes,
where would they go?
Thank you. You can check us out online, freedom.ca. We're also on
Free them.
Free them. Yeah, play off words of freedom.
Yeah.
Freethem.ca. And we have a whole volunteer section under the contact us. You can also drop us a DM on Instagram. It's free_them_.
Amazing.
And my DMs are always open too, just at Shae Invidiata if you have any questions.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
My pleasure.
Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.